All the way back in 2010, before anybody and everybody had a podcast, Wholesaler Masterminds Radio was on the air. Now it's in a whole different feed at iTunes, but there are some shows in there I want you to hear. Now rest assured, we've done our best to clean them up because the originals sounded a lot like AM radio, but they are no less important because there's great speakers and trainers and authors and thought leaders. And that's why in this feed at the new Wholesaler Masterminds Radio show, we're going to start dropping in our archived series. And you'll see that designated in the feed, so please enjoy. Welcome to the only podcast on the planet dedicated to exploring the art, science, and lifestyle of wholesalers and their leaders. This is the new Wholesaler Masterminds Radio show. I'm your host, the founder of Wholesaler Masterminds, Rob Shore.
Welcome to another edition of Wholesaler Masterminds Radio. Wholesalers, you know that if you go out to iTunes and look for Wholesaler Masterminds Radio, you'll be able to subscribe and take us on the road with you everywhere that you go. Wholesalers, I don't know if you're familiar with a little publication called Fortune Magazine, he says tongue-in-cheek. We have one of the editors of Fortune Magazine, a gentleman that has been a co-anchor on Wall Street Week with Fortune on PBS. He is a skilled interviewer of notable and memorable members of society and the community like Bill Gates and Rudy Giuliani and Jack Welch and Richard Branson and Peter Drucker and His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales. He is the lead moderator on the global forum from Fortune, and he wrote a book. He wrote a book called Talent Is Overrated: What Really Separates World-Class Performers from Everybody Else. So I saw this book reference on a website that I read. I bought the book. I started reading about it, and I sent him an email, and I said, Geoff, I would really, really so much appreciate if you could come and talk to our community of wholesalers at Wholesaler Mastermind Radio. So, Geoff Colvin, it is a distinct pleasure to welcome you to Wholesaler Masterminds Radio.
Thank you, Rob, for a very fulsome introduction. I'm very happy to be with you.
Well, I appreciate that so much. So as I explained to you kind of in our pre-discussion, I generally have the opportunity to interview experts that are outside of our community and help our community grow and prosper from their knowledge, but they're not necessarily affiliated with our community. Here, you are a card-carrying member of our community and have some really brilliant stuff to talk about inside of your book. I want to get under the hood of this notion of deliberate practice. So let's start with kind of a definition. What the heck does this mean, deliberate practice?
This is a term that was coined by the researchers who have been working on this topic for 30 years now. Now, I want to be clear, this is not me spouting off my views on what makes great performance. This is based on a lot of scientific research that's been done, and the term they came up with, deliberate practice, is very specific. Here are the elements. It's pretty simple in a way, but it's very specific. It is an activity that is neither work nor play, okay? It's not the same as actually performing. I mean, think of sports or music, okay? I mean, it's not the actual performance. At the same time, it's not something you're doing just for fun. It is an activity that is specifically designed to make you better at whatever it is you're working on right now. It is designed particularly to push you just beyond your current level of ability. And this really is the heart of it. It's designed to push you just beyond what you can currently do. Not way beyond what you can currently do, because then you'll just get lost. And it doesn't allow you to perform within your level of ability, because then you won't grow. It's constantly pushing you just past what you are currently able to do. In addition, it is typically an activity that you can repeat at high volume. That turns out to be important. And it is, and this is also crucial, you have continual feedback on how you're doing. Something or someone is constantly telling you whether this is working or not, whether it's better or worse than last time, etc. That's it. Those are the elements. But deliberate practice turns out to be the one factor that all the great performers you can think of, no matter what field they're in, have in common.
So before we talk a little bit about some very recognizable examples about folks that have used this notion, whether they've labeled it as such or not, this notion of deliberate practice to get to their position of greatness, I'd like to kind of revisit a topic that we were discussing in our pre-call, this notion of, don't we all just kind of continue down the path of doing the same thing in our jobs? Let's use our jobs. Wholesalers continue down the path of doing the same thing because, of course, in the wholesaling profession, I know that last year I made $1.75, $2.25, $5.85, and it was the same thing I did the year before and made the same thing, so I must be doing something right, so I'll just continue down that path.
Right. And that's exactly the attitude that most people take, and that's why most people that you and I know may be wonderful people and so forth, but they're not world-class great performers. They think that working hard is good enough, and maybe it is good enough for them, but it is not going to make them better, and it's not going to make them world-class great performers. This is why the deliberate practice notion is such a great opportunity in business in general, and certainly in the wholesaling business. Look, I mean, do you think of the great performers you know in sports? You know, an awful lot of your listeners are going to be sports fans, I'm certain. Think of the greatest sports performers you know. Do they just get up in the morning and go play the game? You know, do they just get up on Sunday and go to the field and play an NFL game or tennis or golf or whatever? No. In fact, I've done some calculations on this, and if you look at the greatest performers, many of them spend less than 5% of their time actually performing. The other 95%, they spend practicing, preparing, making themselves better for the performance.
Let me marinate in that thought for a second, okay?
Okay.
5% of the time performing, 95% of the time preparing, practicing for performance.
Right.
Okay, wholesalers, I'm talking to you right now, okay? Turn up the volume. How much time do you spend preparing? Reading in-depth information about your product, knowing in-depth information about your competitor's product. When you're presenting, how much time are you spending physically standing and delivering your presentation well in advance of the moment that you hit the platform in front of that group of wirehouse brokers, financial advisors, life insurance agents, whatever the case may be? I know, because I coach you guys all the time, that the answer varies upon person, but I suspect it's nowhere near 95% of the time preparing, 5% of the time actually performing.
Right. And in the business world, that's probably not realistic. 95% of the time preparing, we probably can't do that. But we can spend a lot more time preparing than most of us do. And that's why this is such a tremendous opportunity. Because most of your competitors aren't doing it. And if you start doing it, man, you'll be miles ahead.
And that's what the magic is right there, right? So if we can find the nuggets that we bring our listeners, that elevate them, that's what we want to be able to do, to elevate them out of what I call this gigantic sea of wholesaling sameness. Let's talk about a comic icon that you reference inside your book. And even when I say his name, it makes me laugh. So the comic icon is Chris Rock.
Yep.
Let's share with the listeners what you uncovered about this man's deliberate practice.
Absolutely, because he is a perfect example. And I don't know that he ever called it this, but it doesn't matter. He did it. So here's the idea. He's got a whole new comedy tour booked starting the following year. And it opens with a New Year's Eve concert in Madison Square Garden in New York. You could not ask for a higher profile, higher stakes performance than this. Okay, and that's going to be the kickoff for a whole nationwide comedy tour. So he's got to have 2 hours of absolutely fabulous material. what does he do? He starts working on it a year in advance. And he's not just writing the material. He's getting himself booked into little comedy clubs around the country. Now, just imagine how surprised, by the way, those people are when Chris Rock walks out onto the stage, because they generally don't know that he's going to be. But he gets himself booked into these little comedy clubs around the country where he tries out the material. And over again, he tries out the material. Now, think about this. He is constantly trying out new material. Okay, so he's pushing himself beyond what he knows works, because this is stuff that he's never tried before. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. So he's constantly pushing himself. He is getting constant feedback, because the audience tells you, moment by moment, whether this is working or not. And he's able to repeat it at high volume. He goes back into another performance the following night, over and over and over. And after every performance, he goes through the material, figures out what worked, what didn't, throws out what needs to be thrown out, fixes what needs to be fixed, rearranges what's left, and tries it again in front of another audience. Then goes, repeats the cycle. Now, this is a textbook description of deliberate practice. It involved hundreds or perhaps thousands of hours of work on his part, making it better and better. The result being that when he opened on New Year's Eve at Madison Square Garden, he had 2 hours of absolutely fabulous material, and the reason he is, the most successful, the most highly paid comedian in the country is apparent. Okay? When we know what's behind it, we understand how he achieves what he achieves.
As you speak that story, it really dawns on me how difficult it is.
Right.
Because, how much more naked and exposed, even if you're Chris Rock, how much more naked and exposed can you be? And even if it's in Paducah, how much more naked and exposed can you be than standing on a comedy stage with, half in the bag hecklers just waiting to tear you up?
That's right. You're there all alone. You and a microphone, that's it.
Mm-hmm. Wholesalers, how much you pushing yourself? How much are you actually testing the boundaries of what you know to be your capabilities? And who are you using to get your feedback? I talk to too many clients that aren't getting feedback, or the feedback. You know the feedback you get, wholesalers. The feedback you get is you come off the stage and you get the nice job. How many times you've been in a meeting, heard that, wholesalers? You get off stage, you get nice job. That's not feedback. Now, you already are repeating this stuff at a high volume. You do this day upon day upon day. You do one-on-ones, you do small group, you do large group trainings. So you're repeating it at a high volume, but are you repeating the right stuff at the high volume? Geoff Colvin, we are indebted to you for spending about 14 minutes with us today. Wholesalers, jump out to the website. Go pick up a copy of Talent Is Overrated. And, Geoff, can I thank you on behalf of our audience for being here today?
Listen, it is really my pleasure, and if this is of any help to people, I will be extremely happy. I am certain that it is a big, big opportunity, and in the book, of course, they'll learn far more and get far more examples and more specifics about how this is done. But I promise you, it is a huge opportunity for your listeners.
Fabulous. Wholesalers, go tell a friend about Wholesaler Masterminds Radio. Pick up a copy of I Carry the Bag, the official magazine of wholesaling, because there's a lot more over there that will help you increase your effectiveness in your practice as a wholesaler. And we'll see you next time on Wholesaler Masterminds Radio.
It was a heated debate. On one side of the argument was the national sales manager who put his foot down and said, no, we will not allow schedulers to do the work wholesalers should be doing. On the other side of the argument was the long-tenured, successful wholesaler who argued that having a scheduler was a huge efficiency and productivity gain for her business. So, who was right? Well, they both were. At Wholesaler Mastermind Schedulers, we believe that the first contact to schedule a meeting with a prospective advisor or COI should most effectively come from you, as your voice should be the first that they hear. We also believe that for your existing advisor clients, we can save you a ton of time and make you much more effective by letting us do the scheduling. To learn more about Wholesaler Mastermind Schedulers, visit us at wmmschedulers.com.